In a world where getting from one place to another should be simple.
Why does it feel like we're spending more time on traffic than actually moving?
I'm to say everyone. Welcome to today's episode entitled Trapik, Hamon sa Makabagong Lungsod, where we discuss the biggest challenges affecting our cities today. I'm your host, Winona Joy Kapundag, and with me is my co-host, Ryan Ed Remis.
In today's episode, we're tackling an issue that affects all of us: traffic congestion. We'll explore how this growing problem impacts students, commuters, and city life as a whole.
Traffic is more than just about getting stuck on the road. It affects our time, economy, environment, and even our health. That's why this issue connects directly to Sustainable Development Goal number 11, which aims to make cities inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. One of its key focuses is improving transportation systems to make commuting easier and more efficient for everyone.
That's right, Winona. As our cities grow, traffic is becoming an even bigger challenge. Students are late for class, commuters spend hours on the road, and public transport is often unreliable. If we don't find solutions now, congestion will only get worse.
That's why in this episode, we'll hear from three voices who experience traffic in different ways: a student who drives, a student commuter, and an advocate for better urban mobility. They'll share their perspectives on what's causing the problem and what changes need to happen.
Whether you drive, commute, or are just tired of traffic, this conversation is for you. So stick around and let's dive into today's discussion and explore how we can move toward a more sustainable and commuter friendly future.
To help us understand this issue better, we have our first guest speaker, a senior high school student from Ateneo de Davao University. She's here to share her first-hand experiences and thoughts on the traffic situation in Davao. Please welcome Giannina Francesca Tan. We're glad to have you here.
Hi, I'm Nina Tan from Ateneo de Davao University Senior High School. I'm so glad to be a part of this podcast. Traffic is something I deal with every day, so I'm excited to share my thoughts on this issue.
We're excited to hear your insights. Let's start with the basics. How would you describe the current traffic situation here in Davao?
Based on my experience, traffic in Davao is getting worse. Every morning, I wake up as early as 6 a.m. to prepare for school. I leave at around 7 a.m. But no matter how early I try to go, the roads are always congested. There are days when I end up being late because of the traffic, and I even miss some of the school activities because of it. The slow moving traffic, the ineffective traffic management, and the delayed traffic lights make the situation even more frustrating. It's something that affects not just me but a lot of students and co-workers as well.
That sounds really stressful. Waking up early only to get stuck in traffic must be frustrating, especially when it affects your school performance. Now, do you think this worsening traffic situation is one of the reasons why more people are buying cars?
I think traffic is definitely a factor. Public transportation is becoming more exhausting and unreliable. Many people have to wait for a long time just to find a jeepney or bus that isn't full. Because of this, more families are deciding to buy their own cars. For students like me, workers, and business owners, having a car makes traveling more convenient. You don't have to struggle to find a ride or worry about getting stuck in an overcrowded jeepney.
That's true. Owning a car does provide convenience, but at the same time, more cars on the road can also make traffic worse. If public transportation were improved, would you consider using it instead of a private car?
I will definitely consider it. I occasionally commute after school, and honestly, it's really exhausting. The struggle of finding a jeepney that follows my road home is frustrating. If public transportation were more efficient, if there were less traffic, less air pollution, and better roads, I wouldn't mind commuting at all. It would be a much better option for many students and workers.
That makes a lot of sense. If the public transportation system was well organized and reliable, more people would likely use it instead of relying on private cars. Now, with more students driving their own cars, do you think this is a major contributor to traffic congestion?
do believe that the increase in student drivers add to the congestion, but at the same time, I don't think students should be blamed for it. We just want a reliable way to get to school on time without having to deal with the struggles of commuting. Instead, I think it's the government's responsibility to address this issue. They should focus on improving public transportation and creating solutions like alternative roads, better traffic management, and more modern transportation options. If these were in place, fewer people will feel the need to buy their own cars.
That's a really good point. It's not just about the number of cars, it's about having an efficient transportation system that works for everyone. Thank you so much, Nina, for sharing your experiences and insights. Your perspective as a student really highlights the challenges many commuters face every day.
Thank you for that, Winona and Nina. Now let's move on to our next guest. She's a senior high school student from Ateneo de Davao University, and like many students and workers, she relies on public transportation every day to get to school. Given the heavy congestion in Davao, commuting can be quite a challenge for her. Please help me welcome Miss Chari Hart Francisco. Chari, thank you for being here today. To start, can you share what your daily commuting experience is like?
Honestly, it's exhausting. I have to wake up extra early just to make sure I get to school on time. The streets are always congested, and finding a ride, whether it's a jeepney or a taxi, is a struggle, especially during rush hours. There are times when I have to wait for several minutes, sometimes even an hour before I can get on a jeep that isn't ready already full. And once I do, it's cramped, hot, and uncomfortable for me and making the whole trip even more tiring.
That sounds really frustrating. Waking up early just to spend so much time waiting for a ride must be exhausting. It's no surprise that a lot of students and workers feel the same way. Because of this, have you ever considered getting a car to avoid these daily struggles?
Of course, I've thought about it. Having my own car would mean I wouldn't have to deal with long waits, overcrowding, and unpredictable travel times. I wouldn't have to worry about whether I'd make it to school on time or not. But then again, owning a car isn't a perfect solution. Traffic is already bad, and adding more cars would only make it worse. Plus, not everyone can afford to buy and maintain a car for students like me. It's just not realistic.
That's a really good point. If more people got cars, the congestion would only increase, and it wouldn't necessarily make commuting easier for everyone. Now, let's talk about what the government isn't doing about this. In your opinion, do you think the government is making enough efforts to address this issue?
For me, I think they're trying, but it's not enough because there are projects like road widening and new traffic schemes, but they don't seem to be solving the root problems. Public transportation options are still very limited. There aren't enough jeepneys and buses to accommodate all commuters, and the rising fuel prices are making things worse. Fare increases make commuting even harder for students and workers who already struggle with daily expenses.
Yes, that is true. The rising costs and lack of efficient transport options just make the problem worse for people who rely on public transport. If you had the chance to suggest improvements, what changes do you think should be made to make commuting more bearable?
We need a better public transportation system, more buses, and a more organized schedule so that people don't have to fight for a ride. Right now, there's no guarantee that you'll get to your destination on time. I also think we need to designated bus and jeepney stops that are properly enforced to reduce congestions. If the government would invest in modern transportation options like a bus rapid transit system or even a train system for Davao, that would really help. And lastly, stricter traffic management and better road discipline are important. Sometimes congestions isn't just caused by the number of vehicles, but also by poor driving habits and lack of proper road rules.
So those are some very excellent points, Shari. A well-planned public transportation system and stricter traffic management could really make a difference. Thank you so much for sharing your experience and insights. Your story truly highlights what many students and workers go through every day, and it's clear that we need better long-term solutions for commuters.
Now, to make this discussion more insightful, let's hear from an advocate for reducing traffic congestions and improving urban mobility. Please help me welcome James Douglas Laher. Thank you for being here.
For having me. Traffic congestion is something we all experience daily, and it affects students, workers, and businesses. But more than just an inconvenience, traffic has a serious economic, social, and environmental consequences.
So,
Let's start with the big question. Why do you think traffic congestion is such a huge issue, especially for students?
There are a few major reasons as to why. First, we have an overdependence on private vehicles. Many students prefer cars before public transportation because say that it is unreliable, uncomfortable, or unsafe. But the more cars we have on the road, the worse the congestion gets. Second, poor urban planning plays a role. Many of our roads and transport systems weren't designed for the number of vehicles we have today, especially near schools and business districts. Narrow roads, a lack of proper bike lanes, and limited pedestrian spaces make congestion even worse. And lastly, enforcement of traffic laws is inconsistent. Illegal parkings, reckless driving, and poorly managed intersections all contribute to gridlock. Without proper regulation and discipline on the road, traffic problems persist.
That makes sense. Some people argue that expanding roads is the best solution to reduce congestion. Do you agree?
Not exactly. It sounds logical. More roads should mean less congestion, right? But in reality, something called induced demand happens. When you expand roads, more people start using them, and after a while, traffic returns to the same level or even gets worse. Instead of focusing on road expansion, we need to invest in public transportation, carpooling, and walkable cities. If students and commuters have better alternatives, fewer people will need to rely on private cars. And that's what truly reduces congestion in the long run.
mm,
That's an interesting point. So, what specific improvements do you think should be made to public transportation for students?
First, efficiency and reliability are key. Students can't afford to be late because a bus or jeepney didn't arrive on time. We need more frequent and predictable public transport options. Second, safety must be a priority. A lot of students, especially those commuting at night, worry about their safety. Well lit waiting areas, designated transport stops, and security measures would make commuting much safer. Lastly, affordability is crucial. If students find public transport too expensive or inconvenient, they'll choose cars or motorcycles instead, which adds to congestion. Subsidized fares, student discounts, or free shuttle services could help encourage more students to use public transit.
so
That's a great point. But what about students who already own cars? Many of them say public transportation is just too stressful, so they prefer driving. What would you say to them?
Completely understand that perspective. Right now, public transport isn't always the most comfortable or efficient option. However, if more students rely on cars, we're only adding to the congestion problem. There are ways to help, though. Carpooling is one of the greatest options. If students who live near each other share rides, it can reduce the number of vehicles on the roads. Schools and universities can also encourage alternative transport options like bike lanes or shuttle services. And of course, we all need to support efforts to improve public transport because the more people demand change, the faster we'll see real improvements.
That's a good point. If you had the power to change one thing about our city's traffic system, what would it be?
I'd push for a student friendly mobility plan. one that prioritizes efficient public transport, safer sidewalks and bike lanes, and incentives for carpooling. Instead of just building more roads, we should be investing in sustainable solutions that benefit both students and the general public. It's about creating a system where students don't feel forced to buy a car just to get on school on time.
Wow, that's a strong message. Before we wrap up, what final words would you like to share with students, commuters, and policymakers alike?
I know commuting can be frustrating and irritating, but we need to push for better solutions instead of just accepting traffic as part of our daily lives. To drivers, consider alternatives when possible, whether it's carpooling, biking, or using public transport. And to policymakers, invest in sustainable and student friendly mobility solutions because a well planned city benefits everyone, not just drivers. If we all do our part, we can make real progress in solving traffic congestion.
Very well said. Thank you, James, for sharing your valuable insights.
Very well said. Thank you, James, for sharing with us your valuable insights. After hearing different perspectives, one thing is clear: traffic isn't just about congested roads, it's about how our cities are built, how we move, and how we prioritize transportation.
We've learned that students, drivers struggle with long travel times and parking, while commuters face unreliable public transport. And, as our advocate pointed out, real solutions require better urban planning, improved public transit, and a shift toward sustainable mobility.
That brings us back to Sustainable Development Goal number 11: building cities that are inclusive, safe, resilient, and sustainable. To reduce traffic, we need smarter infrastructure, more efficient transportation systems, and policies that put people, not just cars, first.
Traffic congestion affects us all, but the good news? We can be part of the solution.
Support sustainable transportation, demand better urban planning, and make choices that help ease congestion, whether it's carpooling, using public transit, or advocating for walkable cities.
If we want change, it starts with awareness, action, and pushing for cities that work for everyone.
Because at the end of the day, a city that moves efficiently.
Is a city that moves forward.
Thank you for joining us in today's episode, Trapik, Hamon sa Makabagong Lungsod. Let's keep the conversation going and keep working towards a better, more sustainable future. Once again, this was your host, Winona Joy Kapundan.
And your co-host Ryan Ed Esremis.
Till next time, and ad mayorem daig.